what do you think, Neil? How did I do? Can I be in your next concert? Oh, wait. This isn't a Neil Young audition? Oh, well, what is this then? Oh, hi, Sophia. Oh, it's the You Spoke, We Listened. Hey, everybody out there in infotex land. Yeah, I wanted to talk to you again about how when you speak, we listen. I don't know if you remember, but earlier this year we did a You Spoke, We Listened short movie in front of our movies that kind of went over, several suggestions that we had gathered from our customers and webinar attendees over the year of 2019. And here we are already, this was just kind of the strength that numbers that we got, but here we are already, like mid-March of 2020, and this just kind of proves the old adage that if you show people you're willing to listen to them, they'll speak more. And so we already have, 5 new ideas coming in. And we've got a lot of kudos from our clients on the shorts. They want us to keep the shorts coming. We're actually starting to, realize that, maybe we should make all our movies, short, 20 to 30-minute movies. And then yet the one movie we did this year that was, longer than 20, 30 minutes, it was an hour, was a movie followed by a panel discussion. And seems like everybody liked that panel discussion as well. We are getting input saying, hey, talk to us more about what you do for us. And so we have updated our what to expect in an incident response test, as well as our what to expect in an audit for our incident response testing clients and our audit clients. But that brings us to our third bullet point, which is we want more technical stuff for technical clients. And, I'm already working on twisting a few arms to get that taken care of. But that actually came out of our movie, What the Cat Seems to Be, which is the one webinar we had that had a lot more technical people came to that webinar than we're used to seeing. So, thank you, technical people, for pulling your technical self away from all of those technical problems that you get to technically solve. And we love it, and we'll definitely be working on that. The one that is truly my fault, we've had a debate about it for a long time, but I don't know if you remember, but we always used to, have kind of a 2-minute warning, and we'd start our webinars 2 minutes late. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to start them on time. The person that came in with that complaint was correct. I mean, we're punishing the people that show up on time for the sake of those who don't. And it's not like our movies start out with a lot of content anyway. So we're going to go ahead and start on time. This last one, out of the hundreds and hundreds of ideas we got, a half of one came in, or, one idea came in saying, hey, love Dan on the harmonica. I'd like to see more of that. And you actually already did in the introduction to this You Spoke, We Listened. So if you give us feedback, we want to get right on it. We're already doing number 1 here. We're already working on number 2. We're twisting some arms. This is the heavy lift for us, but you'll see some technical stuff coming out soon. We're definitely going to start everything on time, and you've already seen me play a different song on the harmonica. So thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for the feedback.
Our lawyers want you to know that when you attend any of our webinars or watch any of our movies, you're agreeing to the terms of service located at the link on the screen. We're also required to provide this abbreviation of what our terms of service include. The main point we need to get across is that regulations change on a regular basis, and we want you to know that what we present can sometimes be very time-dated information or our own interpretation of new guidance or regulations. The materials we present today are subject to change. Also, whenever we provide free boilerplates as part of our webinars or movies, we're required to point out our transfer of copyright agreement, which is also located on our website, in our IT resources library. You can read it by going to the link on the screen. Please also note, by attending an infotex webinar or by receiving any infotex movie, you may be added to our mailing list. We apologize if you'd rather not receive notice of other free education. You can always opt out at the link on the screen. And now, it is our pleasure to introduce to you our webinar moderator, the code curator and special envoy from the SIEM, Michael Hartke.
Hello everybody, my name is Michael Hartke. I'm the curator of code here at Infotex and your moderator. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. We'd like to point out destinations on our website, webinars.infotex.com, where you can find our upcoming webinar topics and event schedule, and then also movies.infotex.com, where you can find the movies of these webinars and training videos. And now, I'd like to introduce the speaker of today's event, the awareness guru from Indiana, the breaker of tech and enforcer of policy. He has 13 letters after his name, and they all spell risk management. Dan Hadaway. Dan?
Oh, thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate that introduction. And real quick, our shout out today is going to be right back at Michael, who's been very instrumental in our developing our Put a Watch service, which is something we offer to our MSSP clients, where we can actually focus our monitoring on individual assets, users, IP addresses, vendors, et cetera, et cetera. So, but in the interest of keeping this short, I just want to dive right in. Some of you might not know, but my Bachelor of Arts degree is actually in architecture. And back in those days, this is a cross section. You're looking down at a cut through a design for dorm rooms. And so, when I was in college, freshman year at least, we designed a lot of dorms. We'd go out and look at our dorms and figure out what's wrong with them and stuff like that. And what's kind of interesting, and really why I'm bringing this up as a metaphor, is that, we need to start thinking about some of the physical security aspects of what we do. And so if you think about it, we were really kind of designing colonnades on a regular basis because that was kind of the cool thing back in the 1970s. Postmodernism was still kind of new then, and you could put colonnades up where the columns were upside down and all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, the point is that nowadays, and by the way, I don't know if I'm going to ask you to think of yourself, is there anything else I might be able to see in this? But before we go there, let me kind of say that nowadays I feel like because of the whole nature of the way college is now, where, if you have a colonnade like this, it might be easy for somebody to be mugged or a sexual assault or whatever. We probably would be more like instead of a colonnade, let's put a lunchroom and, a rec hall or something in our dorm design, because we want to make sure that we've got the ability for people to see everything, et cetera, et cetera. But by the way, and I know I'm speaking fast, but this is a webinar movie short, okay? But what I'd like to point out is that you might be able to see something here that maybe you're not actually seeing, because there's more to the picture than meets the eye here. And so what I want to talk about is the fact that we feel it's time for banks to start really heavily considering adding their fraud team, and I'm putting air quotes around the word fraud team because in most of our clients, the fraud team is really your physical security officer. We're suggesting that you put your physical security person or your fraud team on the incident response team. And if that's not possible, maybe at least adding them to the daily report distribution list and providing a little bit of training on how they can read those reports from their perspective. The reason is that we are finding a gap in the ability to monitor the insider threat. It's often a black box to us. And what insiders do is leverage their legitimate access, right? And so illegitimate activity looks like legitimate activity to us. So what we're learning is that in order to catch legitimate, illegitimate activity, or maybe you could say illegitimate, legitimate activity, we need somebody that has a different perspective. If we can get somebody on the team that knows that so-and-so might be doing such and such, Well, that's going to make it a lot easier for us to see things that maybe we can't see if we don't suspect that so-and-so is doing such and such. Make sense? And what we've come to realize is that the fraud monitoring component of your bank has to manage legal risk. I mean, if you think about it, if people outside the fraud function know about suspicions against an employee, even if so-and-so is committing such and such, the bank could get sued. Let's face it, right now your fraud person is simply not going to come to an IT person and say, hey, can you keep an eye on so-and-so and let us know if she's committing such and such? I mean, the bank could get sued if management team members are holding discussions saying, stuff like, hey, we think this employee might be ripping us off, right? Or, hey, this employee has a lot more money than a teller should be making. Or, we suspect this employee is working with an outsider. Or wouldn't it be great if we could get out in front of the termination process before we even decide we're going to let somebody go? And so can you imagine, the fraud people or, the HR people coming to you and saying, hey, if this employee doesn't start cleaning up his or her act, she or he is going to be fired. And I don't know if you've noticed, but this employee seems rather vindictive. We can't get out in front of that if we're involving our management team members. I mean, the people involved in that kind of process just can't go to the IT people with an early heads up without exposing the bank to legal risk. I mean, they might already be coming to you with an early heads up, but when they do, they probably are aware of the fact that they're taking a little bit of legal risk. And so what we fear is that right now, if the fraud team thinks that so-and-so is committing such and such, they are not leveraging one of the best monitoring controls that we have in place. We want to break through that. And so what would it be like if this black box that you're looking at right now was kind of overlaid over the diagram that I just showed you? And so what I'm basically saying is, what would it be like if the fraud team was involved in the incident response process? Well, now we realize, hey, we were looking at the wrong, items, and some of you might have caught this, right? But that diagram really was not a dorm design and layout. It was what we call ambiguous figure background contrast in the architecture world. And it really, in my opinion, helps exude that we have to be able to see what's going on from the visibility of the people who might know that something might be going on. And so we feel we feel like there's a lot of things you can do to add that black box into the bank's visibility. Now, again, the fraud team isn't going to want to tell you, hey, we suspect somebody. Or what if the fraud team is suspecting one of the IT people, right? So we feel like you should add your fraud team or your fraud person or your physical security officer to the calling tree, as well as the daily report distribution. The fraud person might see something in that daily report distribution that confirms things that the fraud person was suspecting anyway. But then also, a lot of you, I hope, already understand what we can do with the PAW process, the put a watch process. So we can watch any asset, we can watch any IP address, we can watch any account or username, and then report on that in one nice little neat report to somebody on that report's distribution. And so we feel like you should not only add your fraud person to the daily report distribution, but then maybe also train your fraud person on the PAW capabilities of our SIEM. And by the way, if you're watching this webinar movie and you're not using infotex for your SIEM, we sure hope that any SIEM gives you the ability to put a watch on specific assets, accounts, users, IP addresses, vendors, by the way. I mean, they log in with a username, so we watch, and that's actually where a lot of our clients are using the PAW services to watch your vendors. But then finally, this is a big one. You have to have faith that You know what I mean? Well, I mean, if you're committing fraud as an IT person, maybe you don't want to implement, bullet point number 3. But I say that in jest. I feel like, the problem with the insider threat is that we all trust each other. And gosh, I trust every single client I've ever met. That I don't think anybody's committing fraud that are our clients. But if they are, the impact of that is black swan. The likelihood is very low. On a scale of 1 to 8, the likelihood of somebody in our bank, if we're a small bank, committing some kind of legitimate activity, is on a scale of 1 to 8, it's probably 0.5, right? But on a scale of 1 to 5, the impact of insider breaches, in my opinion, is at least a 6. I mean, it's black swan. It's the biggest impact we're going to get. Our customers will forgive us for, the Heartland payment system breach, or for, even us clicking on a link. Our customers get it. They'll forgive us for that. But if somebody that we hired and somebody that we consider to be our friend hurts our customer maliciously or on purpose, we're not going to be forgiven. That's going to hurt our reputation. I'm giving a talk, by the way, on the insider threat in several venues this year, and there's statistics showing that the likelihood of the insider threat is rising. Now, I believe it might be more because the insider threat is becoming more known. We're being more suspicious of our insiders. I don't know, but there are more insider breaches being reported now than there were in the past. And so what we would like you to consider doing in order to mitigate the legal risk that is causing your physical security officer to not share any suspicions with you, we feel like you should list whoever that person is, whether it's your fraud team, whether it's your fraud officer, your physical security officer, whatever position is responsible for monitoring internal fraud. We feel like that person should be listed in our contacts database. They'll need to create a passphrase, or they can opt out, get the call back. Probably the opt-out's probably just as well. Why make them remember another password? It's not like they're going to call us in the middle of the night and we can't call them back at the bank. But we're also going to then require them to make a phone call to the knock line whenever we put a watch on asset, user, account, blah, blah, blah. And so because of that, in order for us to keep this invisible to the IT people, and I know we're saying this is adding the black box to your visibility, but it's really adding the black box to the bank's visibility, not as much the IT team's visibility. But we feel like you need to make sure that if we set up a PAW for the fraud person, that fraud person will need to learn a password, and that would be the password that they use to log into the PAW report, which will be sent via secure messaging. Now, on the IT team, you will see, there's a secure message going to the fraud person. They must be watching something. That's not going to cause legal risk because we already know your fraud people are watching for internal fraud. They just don't want to share with you who might be committing that fraud because we can't accuse our employees of stealing unless we know for sure that they are. Just immoral to do that in the first place. It's really bad for morale to do that in the second place, but most importantly, from a risk management perspective, is that substantially increases legal risk. So with that, I'm going to end this webinar movie. And having said that, let me see here. I've already played the harmonica, haven't I? Well, just in case. And after that, I guess I only have one last thing to say, and that is never forget, awareness is 9/11 of the battle.
Great information as always. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Sophia. And thank you for joining us today.
Be sure to check out our movie on how to test your SIEM, located on movies.infotex.com.